I've been thinking a lot lately about how impossible it is to compare your life to someone else's. And I don't just mean comparison makes you unhappy. I think a lot of us have heard that comparison is the thief of joy. That is a big piece of this, what I'm thinking in this video, but I mean, I'm not even sure if it makes sense when you really think about it. I remember being in high school and seeing kids drive around brand new cars. I specifically remember like a 2013 brand new Mustang when I was in high school. That will kind of put a date on me on about how old I am, but I remember their parents bought them this brand new Mustang, and people looked at him differently. Somehow, the 16-year-old driving the car seemed successful. He seemed important. And you could tell by the way that he carried himself that he felt important too. The status that he got from having that car had almost or exactly nothing to do with anything that he had actually done. He didn't work for it. He didn't save for it. He didn't have to sacrifice anything for it. The car just appeared in his life. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I guarantee you that if my parents would have offered me a brand new Mustang while I was in high school, I would have accepted it gladly. And I probably would have carried myself the same way too. I would have been like, man, I'm cool. I got a brand new car. But it made me realize how often we judge people by what they have without knowing anything about how they got it. We see the car, we don't see the starting point. In adulthood, we see a job title, we don't see who may have helped them get there. We see the house, we see the body, we see the relationship, we see the money that somebody has, but we don't see the advantages. We don't see the setbacks that they might have encountered, the sacrifices that they made, the years that came before all of that, right? We think overnight success. Maybe we don't think overnight success, but we don't see everything that happened up until that point. And we don't see the thoughts that keep them up at night. And yet, we still take all of these visible things and we put people in order. We say this person is ahead. That person is behind. I'm behind. This person is winning. That person needs to catch up. I need to catch up. I do this a lot. But ahead of what? I mean, is there a timeline? We weren't handed a manual as humans and said, this is what you need. According to whose timeline are these people in order? Two people can end up in the exact same place, but traveled completely different distances to get there. I think that's where comparison really starts to fall apart. We are usually comparing outcomes, and we're almost never comparing the full story. I'm recording this video because that's probably the number one thing I've struggled with throughout my life. Just to tell you a little bit about myself. So I worked for an internet marketing company for about 6 years, like the last 6 years or so. It was a personal development company. So we sold courses and coaching and in-person events. And honestly, I learned a lot while I was there. I learned a lot about business. I learned how sales and marketing worked. I did a lot of sales. I did a ton of marketing. Marketing was my main role. I was exposed to ideas about discipline. I was around a lot of high net worth people. I was exposed to ideas about responsibility, mindset, and building a life intentionally. And I met a lot of people who were very ambitious and people that were willing to take a lot of risk. In a lot of ways, that experience completely changed the direction of my life. But I also think that parts of that environment did me more harm than good because I was constantly surrounded by people who appeared to be incredibly successful. How I was measuring it at the time as a younger guy, um, I measured success by money. And it was harmful because some of them were my age, some of them were even younger than me. I met these people at these events that were younger than me, and they had supposedly, whether they did or not, I think most of them did, but they had $1 million coaching businesses and sales companies, and they had huge audiences online, and they drove expensive cars, and they would pull up to these meetings in, Audi R8 and McLarens and Ferraris, and they would tell their stories about how they escaped this normal life and created freedom for themselves. And normal was really a term that got really confusing to me. And average became just a terrible word. Who wants to be average? And when you spend enough time around that, or I guess I should say I'm not going to speak for other people. I spent enough time around that, and it really started to change what normal meant to me and what felt normal. A good job no longer felt like it was enough because somebody my age was supposedly making $100,000 a month in a coaching business. Why would I want to have any kind of job where I'm doing a lot of work, putting in a lot of time, late nights, sacrificing things, and I'm nowhere near that amount of money? Having a decent apartment didn't feel like progress because somebody else is posting videos from a mansion. I mean, like a 19-year-old kid with a coaching business and a full sales floor posting pictures from his Beverly Hills mansion. It was That was pretty rough um, on me when I had a really big problem with comparing myself to other people. Saving a little bit of money didn't feel meaningful because everyone around me was talking about their seven-figure years. I remember my boss talking about how he lost like $800,000 on a Bitcoin buy, and it was nothing to him because the company was bringing in millions a month. So without really realizing it, I started using these exceptional people, what I thought was exceptional, that definitely outlier, I think would be a better term for it, as a baseline for what my life was supposed to look like. And I think that really distorted my sense of reality. I wasn't comparing myself to an average person because everything that was beat into my head around that time was average was a bad word. You don't want to be average. Average person is X amount of dollars in debt. Average person is this unhealthy according to these metrics. The average person is obese, and why would you want to be average? Which, to an extent, I agree with that. I still kind of live by the principle of I don't want to be average, but to the extent that I was comparing myself to other people, this average word, it became like the plague. And I wasn't comparing myself to people who had similar circumstances or skills or opportunities. I was comparing myself to the most visible and successful people that I could find. And it wasn't that hard in my line of work. They were everywhere. And then I would wonder why I felt inadequate. I mean, on a daily basis, I would just wake up with this I'm not doing enough feeling. And no matter how much I did, I was not satiated by the amount of work that I was doing. And the thing is, I didn't know their full stories. I knew what they would tell me. I knew what they were willing to tell me and tell their audience. But I also got a lot of experience in understanding how people fabricate these stories for marketing success. I didn't know how much help they received. I didn't know what advantages they started with. I can think of a couple of stories of specific people that for the longest time, I had no idea what kind of giant loan they got in the beginning or what kind of safety net that they had waiting on them. I didn't know how much of what I was seeing was actually real. I didn't know what was exaggerated or what their success cost them in other areas of life. All I saw was the result. All I saw was this kid pulling up to these meetings that I was at in a McLaren, in an Audi, in a Ferrari. And because I only saw the result, I assumed that the distance between their life and mine was evidence that I was doing something wrong. Every time there was a gap, and I'll take a lot of fault for this. Some people are inspired by that gap, right? And to an extent, I was, but for the most part, I would say it was I was judging myself. Like this gap that I saw between me and these people, where it was evidence that I was doing something wrong, and I really internalized that. And instead of looking at how far I'd come, I was constantly looking at how far away I was from that person. And even when something in my life was like actually genuinely going well, I had a hard time enjoying it. I was never present. I was always feeling like I was behind. Every accomplishment came with the immediate thought that somebody else had already done it, they had done it better, and they had done it with seemingly less effort. And the longer I stayed in that environment, the more I started to see actually behind the curtain. And at its best, some of these people were making sacrifices in other areas of their life that most people simply wouldn't be willing to make. I did not want to make the same sacrifices that I saw these people make. And at its worst, a lot of what I was seeing was just straight up not real. Like, I have seen numbers exaggerated and success manufactured for marketing, and sometimes people selling the transformation itself were doing real damage to the people that were trusting them. But whether their success was real or exaggerated or built through sacrifices I would never want to make in the first place, I still allowed it to become the standard for my own life. And for all of those reasons, I did eventually decide to leave the business and marketing life that I was a part of. And that was incredibly difficult. Maybe I'll explain it in another video if someone's actually interested in hearing it. But I completely shifted it. I went into a completely different line of work. What I was doing felt soulless. And over the last year, I've had to like actually start like deprogramming myself from the way that I compared my life to other people's. And I'm still working on it. I still do it. And the more that I think about it, the more I realize that comparison was never a fair measurement to begin with. Because when we compare ourselves to other people, we usually compare where they are now and where we are now. But we almost never compare where each person started. Two people can be the same age and still be living completely different chapters of life. One person may have grown up around business owners. They may have had parents who taught them about money. They helped them build their confidence. Maybe they introduced them to the right people at an early age. Maybe their parents were the right people and also gave them a safe place to fall. I mean, there's so many of us don't have that. And it changes the way that you take risks. And another person may have spent their early adulthood trying to recover from a difficult childhood. Maybe they had to work through debt. Maybe they had to take care of family that couldn't take care of themselves. Maybe learning basic life skills on their own was the thing that they were doing in their early 20s. Maybe they just had to figure out how to survive because they were just never taught a healthy way to live. Those two people might be standing in a very different place at 30 years old. But the distance between them doesn't automatically tell us who worked harder, and it doesn't tell us who's more intelligent. It definitely doesn't tell us who's more valuable. Sometimes the person who appears to be behind has actually traveled much farther. We just can't see the distance because all we can see is their current location, and that's all we fixate on. So if the visible outcome can't tell us how much someone has grown, what should we actually be measuring? When I think about the periods of my life where I've grown the most, they usually aren't the periods that looked impressive from the outside. Like, sometimes growth does look like making more money, right? Sometimes it does look like getting into better shape or accomplishing something that you've been working towards for a long time. But sometimes growth is way less visible than that. Sometimes it's like learning how to handle disappointment without completely derailing your life, without falling apart. Sometimes it's taking responsibility for something you spent years blaming on other people, learning about victim mentality and how it destroys your life, learning how to take accountability for things. That can take a long time. And there's a lot of shame and guilt involved in that. It could be learning how to set boundaries. I know I've worked with a lot of people that have had to spend a lot of grueling hours in therapy that to learn how to set boundaries, and that can be really hard. Maybe somebody had to learn how to be alone. Maybe somebody had to control their anger or their emotions from changing how they show up in their life or with their family. But none of those things are easy to show off. Like, you can't get on social media and post a picture of yourself becoming more patient. Nobody can see that you handled a situation calmly that would have completely overwhelmed you a few years ago. There usually isn't an award for becoming less bitter or more honest or more dependable, but those changes may say more about the direction of your life than the car that you drive or the amount of money that's in your bank account. I think this is why we connect so much with character development and stories, and why it's such an important part of storytelling. Because the most interesting character usually isn't the person who begins the story with everything figured out. That would be a pretty boring story. It's the person who is tested and they had to come out of their comfort zone. And the person who fails, they lose something, they discover the ways that they were wrong, and then they slowly become capable of carrying more than they could before. So we understand that the struggle is what gives the character's development meaning in stories, but in real life, we do the opposite. We look at the person who seems to have everything and assume that they must be winning. Then we look at our own struggles and we treat them as proof that we're falling behind. I know I do that, and I continue to do it. Maybe the hardest seasons of our lives are not interruptions, they're crucial to our development, our character development. Maybe they are the development. That doesn't mean that suffering in itself automatically makes someone better, because people can go through painful things and they can also come out angry and dishonest and hate the world and be defeated. The growth comes from what we choose to do with those experiences. Do they make us more resentful or more understanding? Do we use them as an excuse to stop, or do we allow them to show us what still needs to change? You know, one of my favorite quotes is I don't actually know who quoted this. I've heard it so many different times, but the same boiling water that hardened the egg softened the potato. You know, it's not the water, it's the thing experiencing the water. So I guess what I'm proposing is that a meaningful life isn't only about what we manage to acquire. Maybe it's also about becoming someone who can face life honestly. Maybe it's about enduring difficulty and still being able to feel joy, still being able to enjoy our life, because our life is not just highs, they're also lows, and we're here to experience that full range of human emotion. But comparison will make that joy incredibly difficult to feel, because it's constantly giving us a moving finish line. There's always going to be someone making more money than you, no matter who you are. I mean, unless you're Elon Musk, I guess, and you're the first trillionaire that we have. But there's always going to be someone making more money. And there's always going to be someone in the gym that's stronger than you or leaner than you. There's always going to be someone that's smarter and more confident, and they get more opportunities and they're luckier and they're more successful. There's always going to be someone who accomplished what you wanted to accomplish at a younger age with more impressive results and seemingly less effort. And even if you somehow pass the person that you're comparing yourself to, your mind will literally just find someone new to make you feel bad again. At least that's what I've noticed in my own life, and I imagine other people feel the same. Maybe you feel the same. Comparison never really allowed me to arrive anywhere. Every accomplishment immediately became smaller when I placed it next to someone else's. Anything that I built could be dismissed by finding someone who built more. And when I was living that way, I was making progress, but I wasn't feeling it. I can look back now and say, man, I really grew as a person during those times. I did a lot. But when I was in it, I felt like I was failing the entire time. So I wasn't feeling joy, because, like, although I was improving my life, I still experienced myself as that failure. And I was getting stronger in the gym, and I still only noticed the people that were stronger than me. I even became more financially stable, and still my accomplishments paled in comparison to the people that were around me, and I just felt bad no matter what. I don't think the answer is to never look at other people, because other people can show us what's possible and they can inspire us and challenge us, and they can also show us where we might be making excuses with the same goal in mind, other people accomplishing things with bigger setbacks than we've had. There's a healthy form of comparison. It says, like, you know, what can I learn from this person? Um, but obviously there's a destructive form that says, what does this person's life prove about mine? And I think comparison can be useful as information, but it becomes dangerous when we use it as a verdict on our own worth. So maybe instead of, am I ahead, am I behind, do they have as much as I do, maybe it should be, am I moving in a direction that I respect? Am I handling life better than I used to? Am I becoming more disciplined? Am I becoming more honest and capable? Am I building a life that actually matters to me, not to someone else when I compare it to other people around me? Am I building one that I think will impress other people, or am I building it for me? And man, I lived in that mode. Every decision that I made it wasn't about me. I mean, I had to figure out what I even wanted when I started going down this path, because every decision that I made was, will this impress the person that I care about? Whether that was my partner or my boss or whoever was in the present moment with me that I needed that validation from. And I think it's important to say that feeling content is not the absence of ambition. It doesn't mean that you stop wanting more of yourself. It means you stop treating your current life like it doesn't have any value until you reach some imaginary level of success. Like these if and whens, you have to get rid of the if and whens. Sorry, I had to get rid of the if and whens. And you can be grateful for where you are while you're still working towards somewhere better. It doesn't minimize what you have now. That's where gratitude comes in. I'm grateful for what I have, but I want more, and that's okay. You can admire someone else's life without using it as evidence that yours is inadequate. My life today does not look like the version of success that I imagined a few years ago, but I also know that I'm more grounded, I'm more capable, and I'm more honest about what I actually want than I was back then, when I was just getting all these hand-me-down values from the people around me. And I'm obviously still trying to work on this. I'm still trying to learn this, and it's why I'm making this video. But I still catch myself looking at people my age and wondering whether I should have accomplished more by now. I mean, there's people in my job that make the same exact amount of money than me, and they're 10, 9, 8 years younger than me. And I think, man, should have just started earlier. But I also know that everything that I went through was very crucial to my growth and development and where I am now. I love this idea of not looking at your life sideways, like looking at the people next to you and saying, oh, that person has more than me at my age, or that person is way more patient than me at my age. And it's not about looking at the people next to you, it's about looking backwards and saying, who was I before this? What is the person that I used to be? And looking at the things that I carry now that would have crushed me before, years ago, and the decisions that I have to make today and how I would have handled them differently years ago. I mean, I used to be a very emotional person that was completely thrown off his game whenever something happened. And today, without getting into details, I can handle some pretty rough things and still move on with my day and do the things that I need to do. The world will probably continue measuring us by our income and our appearance and our possessions, especially with social media and how quickly we reach certain milestones. But those things can only show us where we are, and they can't show us how far we've come. And maybe how far we've come is the measurement that matters the most. Anyway, those are just some thoughts I've been sitting with lately. Honestly, that is a big topic that I've thought about for years. I'm very excited that I was able to shoot this video, record this audio. Look, this is the second video that I've posted. The last one, at the time of me recording this, was obviously the first video, and the first video on this channel that I just threw up in the middle of the night, because I wanted to get some thoughts out. And that last video got over 100 views, and I got 4 subscribers from it, and somebody commented on it and said, thanks for your thoughts. And I think that's pretty cool. I don't have any expectations for this channel. If you're still here, then that means you probably enjoy what I'm talking about here. I'm going to keep this coming because I haven't felt this excited to just to create something and just talk about things in a long time. And I really appreciate you still being here. If you did like this, obviously you can just subscribe. And as always, if you didn't like this, I'm sorry for wasting your time. But thank you for listening. I will see you in the next video.